A plush silence woke her, followed by the soft golden light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ilara pushed herself up, silk sheets pooling at her waist. The air carried a faint, expensive scent of sandalwood. Her head throbbed, an echo of champagne, a crowded bar, and a pair of intense storm-grey eyes. She was alone. The other side of the king-sized bed was cool. A classic walk of shame, then, in a suite that cost more than her year's rent. A wave of embarrassment washed over her. Her dress was draped neatly over a velvet armchair, and as she reached for it, the door to the suite clicked open. He stood in the doorway, more imposing in the daylight, wearing a perfectly tailored dark suit. It was the man from last night, the stranger whose name she couldn't recall. "Good morning," he said, his voice as smooth as she remembered. "I was just leaving," Ilara mumbled, clutching her dress to her chest. "I'd rather you didn't," he said, closing the door softly. He walked to a marble-topped table and picked up a thick folder. "My name is Damien Blackwood." The name hit her like a physical blow. Damien Blackwood, the notoriously private, ruthlessly successful CEO of Blackwood Industries. "I know who you are, Ilara Vance," he continued, his gaze locked on her. "I know you were fired from Ashton Corp, framed for embezzlement. I know your foster mother, Beatrice, and foster sister, Clara, set you up to steal the inheritance you were entitled to." Ilara froze, her blood turning to ice. "How do you know all that?" He opened the folder. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone, "is a marriage contract." He looked up, his grey eyes pinning her in place. "I'm proposing, Ms. Vance. Marry me. In return, I will help you destroy them." The audacity of his words made the air crackle. Ilara stared, her mind scrambling to connect a passionate night with this cold, calculated business deal. A marriage contract for revenge? When she found her voice, it was a thin whisper. "You're insane." "I'm perfectly sane," Damien replied, his composure unshakable. He placed the folder on the table between them. "My proposal isn't about love, Ilara. It's a strategic alliance." Hesitantly, she crept closer, her eyes scanning the top page. It was dense with legal jargon, but marriage agreement to Damien Blackwood and Ilara Vance stood out clearly. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he stated flatly. "I know the Ashtons are your enemies. As it happens, they're mine too." A flicker of something cold and hard crossed his face. "They built their fortune on lies. You want justice. I want to see their empire turn to dust. Our goals are aligned." He began to pace. "The terms are simple. We present a united front, a whirlwind romance, a surprise marriage. You become Mrs. Blackwood, with all the power that name brings. In return, you follow my lead as we execute a plan to dismantle their business and ensure they face real consequences." He spoke with chilling precision, as if outlining a corporate merger. Ilara's head spun with painful memories, Beatrice Ashton's disapproving smile, Clara's fake sympathy, and Arthur Ashton's cold look as he fired her. "You've been a disappointment," he'd said, severing her from the only family she'd ever known. They had taken everything. Her job, her reputation, her inheritance, leaving her with nothing but debt and shame. For 3 months, she'd been fighting a losing battle, sending out resumes that were never answered. She was drowning, and Damien Blackwood was offering her a battleship. Was it a deal with the devil? Perhaps. Marrying a powerful stranger with his own agenda was terrifying. But what was the alternative? Let them win. Through the fear, a new feeling took shape. Cold, hard resolve. This was about reclaiming her life. She looked at Damien, who watched her patiently, as if he already knew her answer. "They ruined my name," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "They tried to ruin my life." She took a deep breath, the air charged with destiny. "Okay, Mr. Blackwood, you have a deal. I'll marry you. The second she said yes, the atmosphere shifted. Any trace of intimacy vanished, replaced by brisk efficiency. Damien gave a sharp nod. "Excellent. The wedding is in 3 days. My lawyers will handle the license and the prenup. You won't be going back to your apartment." Before she could process it, he was on his phone, issuing quiet commands. "Clear my afternoon. Send a wardrobe to the penthouse for Ms. Vance. Have her apartment's contents put in storage." He hung up and looked at her. "My car is waiting. We're going home." Home was a sprawling penthouse overlooking the city, a glass palace in the sky. The minimalist decor was softened by priceless art, a jarring contrast to her own cramped apartment. Within an hour, stylists descended, measuring her and presenting racks of designer clothes. Ilara stood numbly as they transformed her from a disgraced outcast into the future Mrs. Blackwood. Damien watched it all with detached analysis. He wasn't just giving her a wardrobe, he was giving her a costume for the role she was about to play. He was cool and distant, and yet as he adjusted a coat collar on her, his fingers brushed her neck, and a jolt of electricity shot through her, a startling reminder of the man beneath the contract. 3 days later, they were married in a sterile office with only lawyers as witnesses. Their public debut was the next night, the annual Sterling Foundation Gala, the peak of the city's social calendar. It was also where the Ashtons would be. Ilara stood before a full-length mirror, an impostor in a sapphire blue gown and a cascade of diamonds. She felt beautiful, but hollow. "Nervous?" Damien's voice came from behind her. He was fastening his cufflinks, the picture of effortless elegance. "They're going to be there," she whispered. He walked over, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. He placed his hands on her bare shoulders, his touch both a comfort and a brand. "That's the point," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers in the glass. "Tonight, you're not the girl they threw away. You are my wife, you are untouchable. Look at them, smile, and remember we are about to take everything from them. Let that be your strength." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "And when in doubt," he whispered, "pretend you're so madly in love you can't see anyone else." His words were stage direction, but as they entered the grand ballroom to a storm of flashing cameras, his hand resting possessively on her back, the line between acting and reality began to blur. Then she saw them. Beatrice, draped in jewels, her face a mask of shock. Clara, jaw on the floor, eyes burning with jealousy. And Arthur, whose smug expression faltered as he saw Ilara on the arm of Damien Blackwood. Later, Damien steered them directly into their path. "Arthur," Damien said, his voice dangerously smooth, "I'd like to introduce my wife, Ilara Blackwood." Arthur sputtered. "Your wife? Ilara? What is the meaning of this?" "I heard your company is seeking funding," Damien continued, tightening his grip on Ilara's waist. "I was considering an investment, but now—" He let the sentence hang, his smile thin and predatory. "I've lost my appetite. Business is a matter of character, after all." The unspoken threat was clear. The Ashtons looked as if they'd been struck by lightning. Ilara felt a heady surge of power, a taste of the revenge he had promised. Back in the silent penthouse, the adrenaline fled, leaving Ilara shaky. "Are you all right?" Damien asked, loosening his tie. The billionaire was gone, replaced by a man who looked tired. "I don't know," she confessed. "Tonight was satisfying, but it also brought it all back." He walked to the windows, looking out at the glittering city. "Revenge isn't simple," he said quietly. "It can fill you up, but it can also leave you empty." He was silent for a long moment. "The Ashtons didn't just hurt you, Ilara." She looked up, surprised by his personal tone. "Years ago," he began, his back still to her, "Arthur Ashton was partners with a brilliant innovator. Arthur stole his research, patented it as his own, and ruined him. That man was like a father to me. His downfall is why I built my empire, to be so strong that no one could ever do that to me or to anyone I cared about again." He finally turned, and in his storm-grey eyes, she saw not a ruthless CEO, but a man carrying an old, deep wound. It was the same wound she carried, just a different shape. In that moment, the gap between them shrank. He glanced at her feet, where a blister was forming from her new shoes. Without a word, he returned with a first-aid kit and knelt before her, gently cleaning the blister and applying a bandage. The simple, tender act was more intimate than anything they had shared since their first night. It wasn't in the contract. As his fingers brushed her skin, Ilara's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something else entirely. The Ashtons were wounded, but not defeated. A few days later, a sleazy tabloid ran a front-page story. "Billionaire's new bride, gold digger with a criminal past." The article was a masterpiece of character assassination, clearly orchestrated by Clara. It painted Ilara as a manipulative schemer who had trapped Damien for his money and rehashed the old embezzlement lies. The public humiliation was suffocating. Damien found her curled in an armchair, the offending article on a tablet in her trembling hands. Seeing her pale face, his expression hardened into a quiet, controlled fury. "I'm so sorry, Damien," she whispered, tears welling. "This is what they do." He knelt and took the tablet from her. "This is not your fault, Ilara," he said, his voice a low, intense rumble. "This is theirs, and they have just made a grave mistake. They think they're attacking you. They've forgotten they are attacking my wife." Ilara expected Damien to send lawyers to kill the story. He did something far more effective. The next morning, he called a press conference, facing the fire head-on with her by his side. They walked into a room blinding with camera flashes. Damien stood at the podium, a figure of absolute command, holding her hand tightly. "Yesterday, a publication ran a story about my wife filled with malicious lies," he started, his icy tone silencing the room. "Let me be unequivocally clear. Every word of it is false." He didn't just deny it, he dismantled it. His team had worked through the night. He presented Clara Ashton's communication with the tabloid, audited financial records proving Ilara's innocence, and a sworn statement from an employee who witnessed the reports being doctored. Then he turned to Ilara, his expression softening. "I didn't marry Ilara for her past," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "I married her for her character, her resilience, and her integrity. This pathetic smear campaign ends today." He squeezed her hand. "Anyone who comes after my wife will have to go through me, and I assure you that is a fight you will not win." It was a masterstroke that didn't just clear her name, it solidified their image as a power couple. As they walked out, Ilara looked at Damien, her heart pounding. His fierce public defense of her felt more real than any contract. In the weeks that followed, the Ashtons were in freefall, Arthur's investors were pulling out, and Beatrice was ostracized, but Damien wasn't finished. One evening, he called Ilara into his home office. Spread across his desk were dozens of old documents. "It's time," he said. "I found the final piece." In the center was a faded journal and yellowed property deeds. "My investigation into Arthur led me somewhere unexpected," Damien explained, his finger tracing a name on an old deed. "It led me to your father." He then laid out the full, devastating story. Ilara's father had been the original founder of the company that became Ashton Corp, with Arthur as his junior partner. The documents proved it. Her father died in a sudden car accident just before launching a groundbreaking piece of software. As executor of the will, Arthur forged documents, stole the patents, and took the entire company. He then put Ilara into foster care, eventually taking her in himself, a twisted act of charity to ensure she never discovered the truth of her own legacy. "The embezzlement scheme wasn't just about pushing you out," Damien said, his eyes dark with anger. "It was because you were starting to ask questions. He wasn't just disinheriting you, he was stealing your birthright for a second time." The final move was set for the annual Ashton Corp shareholder meeting. Just as Arthur began his speech, the auditorium doors swung open. Damien and Ilara walked in, not as guests, but as conquerors. "Arthur, I believe you have something that belongs to my wife," Damien announced, his voice booming through the room. Arthur's face went white. "Blackwood, what is the meaning of this? This is a private meeting." "It's about to become very public," Damien shot back. He projected the old deeds, forged signatures and original patents onto the massive screen behind Arthur, laying out the story of theft and betrayal for all to see. Then Ilara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "You didn't just steal a company," she said, looking directly at Arthur, Beatrice, and Clara. "You stole my father's legacy. You stole my past and tried to steal my future. You called me family, all while knowing you were the reason I had no family left." Panic erupted as reporters, tipped off by Damien's team, flooded the room. Arthur Ashton stood frozen, exposed and ruined. Beatrice sobbed, while Clara stared with pure hatred. As security escorted Arthur off the stage, Ilara felt a profound sense of release. It wasn't joy, but justice. The fallout for the Ashtons was swift and brutal. Their company was dismantled, their assets frozen, and they faced a mountain of legal charges. The revenge plot was a success. Back in the quiet penthouse, a new tension settled between them. The mission was over. What were they now? A week later, Damien called her into his study. On his desk were 2 documents, their original marriage contract and a new folder. "Our agreement is complete," he said, his voice carefully neutral. He pushed the new folder towards her. "This is the divorce settlement. I have, of course, been more than generous." Elara opened it. Inside were deeds transferring millions into her name. It was a golden parachute to close their deal, and it felt like a punch to the gut. She looked up, her heart aching. This was the deal, but her feelings had never been part of it. Somewhere between the fake smiles and shared danger, she had fallen in love with him. Tears pricked her eyes. She closed the folder and pushed it back. "I don't want it." Damien looked genuinely shocked. "Elara, I don't want your money," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm grateful, but it's not what I want anymore." She took a breath, laying her heart bare. "Somewhere along the way this stopped being pretend for me, Damien. I fell in love with you." A heavy silence filled the room. Damien stared at her, his mask of composure finally cracking, revealing raw, unguarded emotion in his eyes. He stood and walked to the window, his shoulders tense. "Love was never part of the plan," he said, his voice rough. "It's a variable I don't know how to control." "I know," she said softly, walking to stand behind him. "Love isn't a business deal. It can't be controlled. It just is." After what felt like an eternity, he turned. He walked to the desk, picked up the marriage contract, and in one decisive motion, tore it in half. He did the same with the divorce settlement. "You're right," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "This contract is null and void." He reached into his desk and pulled out a small velvet box. "I fell in love with you, Elara. I think it started that first night, but I was too guarded to admit it. This whole pretense only made me fall deeper. I just didn't know how to offer you anything more than a deal." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "This was my mother's," he said softly. He knelt down on one knee. "Elara Vance, you have already honored me by being my wife in name. Now, would you do me the ultimate honor of being my wife in truth? No contracts, no revenge, just a lifetime with me." Tears of pure joy streamed down Elara's face. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Damien, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. As he rose and pulled her into a passionate embrace, the last traces of their strange, calculated beginning melted away. Their journey began with passion and was forged in revenge. United by a dark purpose, they sought justice and found something far more valuable: redemption, trust, and a love more powerful than any contract. His one-night stand hadn't just become his ultimate revenge plot, it had become the beginning of his forever. What did you think of Elara and Damien's story? Let us know your favorite moment in the comments below. And if you love dramatic romance stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.